session is brought to you by Define You's Move Retreat.
You're in your mother's womb for like 9 months, like 9 long months. And that's when you're like being fed and nourished and you're growing. You don't know what's all happening outside your world, but you are going through things even though you don't know. I think that's something that, like, if you won't worry about this problem 9 months from now, or why would you let it attack your life now?
Welcome to Define You Radio. Class is in session each week with guests who didn't let their past define them and have found a way to define themselves in life, money, and business. Pens and papers ready. Class is now in session with your host, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. Hey, kings and queens, and welcome to Define You Radio. I'm your host, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. Class is in session today with MC Ray. He is an author of The Unveiled. He's passionate about the arts, especially the power of storytelling. And you guys know how I tell you your story will change somebody's life. You never know. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into why it's important to create characters that look like you and feel like you and think like you. So we're going to find that out and more. Pens and papers ready. Let's go ahead and welcome MC Ray to the show. Hey, hon, how you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Am I the first person to say MC Hammer? I can't.
Yes, nobody ever gets that reference. So when I call out, like order out food, I'm like MC Hammer, and I'm hoping that the person on there is not like a millennial or something and doesn't know like what who MC Hammer is, because then it doesn't help my cause. But it's worked so far. Now, so you're the first person that said MC Hammer.
So I was so excited to talk to you today for different reasons, because this book in particular is a fantasy book. And I think that's so interesting to me, because mostly a lot of people I know or have interviewed do, nonfiction or something like that. So I think this is very interesting. But before we get into all that, when did you start writing?
So I started writing, I was about 6 years old when I wrote my first book. It was called The Little Frog. And I went on to like the national, I think, level for storytelling and writing in elementary school. So I think that's like the first time I can remember there were that was the first time I remember writing for actual purpose. But it could have very well probably been before that, but like obviously the notoriety makes it like ring in my head. But ever since then I've been writing like all the time, all that I can remember.
I love that. Like, I thought I was special because I could verify the first thing I ever wrote, I was 8. But you got me beat.
Oh yeah. 6 and 8 are just babies,
Right. And I tell people, because I posted it one day, it was a poem that didn't rhyme, but it was still a poem when my great grandfather died. As you put books out there and all of these things come to you, like, that is a priceless thing that'll, you never know. So what's your writing process? Like, with coming up with the story, creating characters, like, do you have a formal process with that, or what does that look like?
So in a normal space, I guess when I was first writing this book, and there's other ones to follow, I've completed the entire series. I'm not ready to reveal how many books there are, but there are others after this. But I was living in St. Simon's at the time, so I had like a lot of more free time on my hands. And so, but I still do this goal now. It's just like on a much smaller scale, because I am like obviously taking on more things. But when I was in St. Simon's, I would set a goal for like 1,000 words a day, and it would allow me to crank out material and always be ready to brainstorm it. Also, if I knew during the day, I would be going ahead and thinking about what I wanted the actual storyline to do, as well as right before writing the book. I think that helps for, like, even if you do navigate towards another path or another plot within the story, that you have something that you're working on or working towards. And so it helps build characters. Like, if I know for the end, like for the next book, that I want my main character to like learn how to fly all of a sudden, or realize she can fly, then I need to I kind of orchestrate that web as far as like what I would want prior to writing. So it helps for me to have material so I can reach my word goals. And I think that also helps with editing. That helps with generating multiple ideas. It also allows you to realize the flow of a story and help come up with something that might be an extension of that. Like, let's say she realizes to fly, but, levitation might fit the storyline better, which is a little bit different, or just a little bit different in context, or something that I'm thinking I would want to happen way later in the book. I think just doing those two things, setting that word goal, because you need to be consistently writing. Cause I feel like everybody's a million times have like waited 2 or 3 days between writing, and they have to go back and read whatever they wrote before to like get back in the flow. But setting that word goal and definitely having a loose skeleton for what you want. And I think that would go for anything, even like script writing that I do, or regular writing, poetry, things of that sort. I think setting that skeleton of how you would like to be, like key points that you want, and it helps for the flow of your natural things. So those two things I would say are my like processes that have worked for me.
I love that, especially setting the word goal, because I'm definitely one of those people, like I have to do it like when the mood strikes. So yeah, I will go days and weeks, and I have to go back and reread. So next time I will try that, setting a word goal to do every day, because I'll get like, oh, not today, Okay, so I've heard different advice when it comes to writing. R.L. Stein, the guy that wrote Goosebumps, something I saw him on, but he was saying he start with the end in mind. Like, so he'll start his books knowing how the book's going to end. Do you do that, or do you think that would be helpful if you did it?
I think I do include that as part of the story skeleton. I definitely know, like, I knew well within, I wouldn't say the completed story, because it is, mine's a series, and R.L. Stein doesn't do like, he does one book per, I think, story. So I think they're intercorrelated. Like when I used to read Goosebumps as a child, but I think that helps with me for sure. Like when I wrote The Unveiled, and the book to come after, like I definitely for each one of those had in mind how I wanted what twist I wanted at the end, what I wanted revealed, and things like that. And it just helped kind of to create a flow in the story that like allows for that setup to happen, and then it also helps create a story like kind of on its own. So if I need a character to like drive this character to a certain location where this event happened that I knew that I wanted to happen, it kind of helps with the story. So I do that in mind. I wouldn't say that I would skip automatically to the end because I don't want it to be finite, but I think I definitely, as part of the skeletons process, like build the whole beginning to end in a loose way, and then write the story from there. So that way I at least have some context. Because the worst thing to do that, I would hate. I personally would hate to do that because just like my books are a little bit lengthy, is to write that ending and then like be so focused on orchestrating that when you might not have enough material to get to that point, and that point might need to be like a midway throughout the book, and something else needs to be the end or end all be all. So I think that works for him just because of like his book length and like because they're each separate specific stories for the most part.
Yeah. Versus a series.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think I could do it as far as that goes. But I definitely appreciate his concept. I think definitely like when writing poetry, things like that. I think that's something that like I think has some of what I want to invoke by this poem. What is the overall message and what I would like to have ending. So I think that's something that I definitely have utilized during writing.
I love that. When I heard his advice, I was like, oh, that's interesting. But hearing your process, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I think one of the reasons why I called the subtitle or whatever for the show is Classes in Session, because I learn as the audience learn, and you're never too old. Because I'm one of those people, and I have ADD too. But I could write because of that, like really, so I literally just start writing. And build my characters from there. And what's funny, because I could easily, what I call, pull the trigger on nonfiction Like I could easily pull the trigger on, the story of my life or putting people's stories
Yeah.
together. But I'm very possessive and have yet to release any fiction or fantasy or anything like that. Have you dipped your toes into the nonfiction world any, and do you see that happening?
Um, hmm. I can't say forever like spoken. Just definitely as far as my own story, that'd be a work of nonfiction. But I
Yeah.
think like telling someone else's story, or writing that in that space would be hard for me, just because I like to write outside the box. Even my stories that are fictitious, but are based on our current world. Like if I was to talk about living in Atlanta and I had four fictional characters, but I'm using the reference that's like a real place. Even that sometimes is hard for me. So I think it would be something that I kind of would be interested in, but it would just be I would definitely feel like I'd have to have a totally different approach to it
Yeah.
than the fiction. But it is something that I'm interested in. I just don't know how good I would be at it.
I love when people could just let their mind open. And normally people aren't that free. Like I'm really possessive when it comes to, which is, and I've published I don't know how many books, 7, 8, whatever.
Oh,
Um, as a child, I wanted to be the Black female Stephen King, right? Because
yes,
I was reading
absolutely.
Stephen King in like 7th grade, 8th grade. I'm talking about it, like the big books. And so I just knew I was going to be the Black female Stephen King. So I do have, like, my imagination is crazy. And I think because of that, I'm a little possessive over that, over inviting somebody into a world that I created. So that's very interesting. I might need to talk to my therapist friend about that part to see.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. And reading about you, and I love everything I saw. I love when young authors and young people are just out there just doing it and being expressive. But one of the things you mentioned that your biggest obstacle was letting go.
Yeah.
How does this affect you as an author?
I think that is a great, like a big piece of me, especially I think it came about as far as this way of thinking because we can't control everything. But I think the things we do control, we kind of try to hold on to those things as finite as well. And I think that's kind of a bigger problem than the realization that like life throws you curveballs. You
Yeah.
should you should ride the waves whether they're good or bad, not like hold on tight to the good waves and like rebel and roll around in the bad ones. Because I think that's like just a bad way of living. I think you should I think joy is just a greater expression than happiness. And I feel like joy isn't dependent upon good or bad waves. It's gratefulness that you can like ride the water no matter what. So I think that
Mm.
that's my whole envision of like making sure that that you're always in this space of moving forward, of pushing yourself, of resilience. Even now, like if anything bad happens to me, I don't harp on it for for more than 3 days. I won't let myself deal with it for 3 days. And the concept behind that is like we were in our and even now I've talked to my friends about this, and this might be a little out there, but you're in your mother's womb for like 9 months, like 9 long months, and that's when you're like being fed and nourished, and you're growing. You don't know what's all happening outside your world, but you are going through things even though you don't know. I think that's something that like if you won't worry about this problem 9 months from now, or why would you let it attack your life now? So
Yeah.
I definitely was in a space at one point where like something had happened and like I let it bother me for like months, and it was just like just to go out on the other end and realize that wow, like I could not have found a worse way to waste time than feeling sorry for myself.
Mm.
And so when it's just been so easy to let go. And so I think that was just something that I appreciate now as far as myself goes, and just like finding that state of joy and being a person that always looking to push themselves forward. I just don't have time to be to wait around anymore, like to not let go and move on.
So when you talked about your resilience, is it important as you build your characters that they incorporate some of those traits that you value? Or do you make them like opposite of you?
I think I put all of those. That all comes into account with me. I think I put characters in there that I want the people to kind of stray away from. I
Yeah.
definitely feel like I like very well. Not I don't like them to be too binary, but I like for people to feel sorry for characters that are bad sometimes. Or not bad in the
Mm.
sense of like abusive, because of
Yeah.
that's that thing to feel sorry for. But just kind of just to hear a full story and kind of know like why this person feels this way or why, or just even like seeing the growth through a character and real and like them like being like, wow, I don't like this character, but then all of a sudden it's like their favorite person or character that like we like no one would think would do something does it, and it's just like, wow, that person's not as good as they thought. And I feel like we're all a part of a spectrum of always being like that we're either good or bad people, and I don't think
Yeah.
it's always a thing. I think we choose to be good or bad people.
Yeah.
But all of us are capable of great good and great evil. And so I think that's just a part of the dimension of humanity. And I think that's something that I want to be invoked in my characters, but also that like at some point we have to have accountability for what we know and what we've learned and what we've experienced, and that being the true determinant of whether or not we're good or bad people. We can all say that we've been through things, but if we get to a place where we're invoking that energy on others, then you are an evil person, no matter what you've been through. Like so. I think that's something that I've tried to put throughout my books. I want to make sure, and those are pieces of me. I think I try to hold myself accountable on a regular basis
Yeah.
for my actions and how I treat people, even when I go through bad things. And that's why I feel like sometimes people think they're going through things because of like it's their storm, but maybe it's their karma. Because I'm a believer of like what you put out there comes back tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
And even out of that respect, I just have like so much more respect for people that are living their lives just as I am. So when I go through things, I know that this is just like a part of the life wave. I don't even try to deduce whether it's karma or if it's just a storm that I'm going through, because like I accept all what life has given me because that's what living is. And so I think I want my characters to surely be that shining example, and I want that feeling and that emotion to be felt. And definitely, as the other books go on, like people are going to feel like their beliefs about themselves as well as the characters to be challenged on a regular basis, and actually have to make those decisions in their head of whether a character is good or bad based off what they read. And I want it to be debatable. I want it to be like something where it's like here are all the facts, and you have something to look at. And I feel like that's how sometimes characters should be. It almost goes back to how like on Disney villains, they're all like these hideous creatures that they make look ugly. They're normally like wearing dark colors or are unattractive, and somehow like, it's just like so cliche that like these people were like born to be looking this way, so they became evil, and it's just like doesn't make sense. I don't want that as far as my writing goes or how portrayal is happening. And also a lot of the character descriptions are based off of things that I see on a regular basis and in myself, even down to like skin complexion and hair. So the book is all about me as a person, but also a lot about how I view the world and how I view human interactions.
Mm. So much wisdom. So much wisdom. Because there is good and evil in all of us. I don't care what people say. There's that proverb that says we all have two wolves inside of us, one evil and one good, and the one that wins is the one we feed the most. But there's still that other wolf inside of us.
Oh yeah, that actually sounds like I want to say if I've heard it before, but that makes like
It's
total sense. I mean, like it's like because the wolves are like there are these dominating animals. It's like who's gonna come out on top, like this for that wolf. So
yeah.
definitely get that analogy.
It's I want to say like a Cherokee proverb or something of that nature, but I always thought it was very interesting.
It sounds like one.
So why is it important? Why is it important to you to write characters that reflect you and look like you?
I think it's important for a number of reasons. I feel like the reason we actually don't have many Black fantasy writers as far as the whole is because we don't get to see ourselves. Like you said, like a lot of people do works of non fiction. We also have always been in the space of doing the same narratives over and over again, and maybe fantasizing those, but it within still the same realm. They are super poignant to the same story. So I definitely wanted something where it was just like, this is a fantasy, a new story, but it looks like you know what I mean? And I want people to, even like looking back on the effect that, obviously the Unveiled and all the other books were probably written well before it, like this even came onto TV. But Black Panther and the effect it had, as far as, even though I feel like its storyline, although fantastical, is still, like very conjoined to the idea of slavery and what happened post-slavery, or an actual storyline that connects to, Marvel's basically just the world, but like if we had superheroes. And so I think that's just something that's interesting. I just wanted people to read a book, no matter their shades or their colors, and like to like enjoy it. Like something that I would say the similar feeling is just like how Beyonce put out Brown Skin Girl. This is like probably the closest example I have, but like regular people, everybody was listening and playing it to this. And there were memes going around of like a white woman who was like, me listening to Brown Skin Girls, even though it's not about me. And she's like dancing, jamming out to it. I'm just like, that, like, it shouldn't be a thing when everybody else in this world has to connect to authors all the time that don't like write characters that look like us. It shouldn't be rocket science for them to do the same courtesy, especially for a good story. So I think that's one reason why I think it's important to write characters like us, because I feel like we don't get to see ourselves in that facet, but also the world should see us in that facet. Yeah. And I feel like if anyone's actually magical in this world, it is Black and brown people, and especially the Black women that I highlight.
I say I'm magic all day.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So, like the resilience, just the things that we've accomplished as a culture, the influence, that's all magic. So I think that's something that I wanted to be able to in a book, and I also want people to be able to read it and see that. And obviously, there's like there's a audience out there that's willing to receive it. There's this book called, I don't know if you've heard of it, Children of Blood and Bone.
Yeah, I heard of it. Hadn't put my hand on it yet, though.
Yeah, I just bought it, so I'm just like, oh wow, there's another. Of course, that's still based in Africa, and I don't know if it's centered around still things that happen in the real world, or if this is like a discovery of magic. But I'm gonna read it and see, and I'll have like a whole review. Probably I'll do on YouTube. But yeah, it's something that that I feel like even on a basic level, like people are ready to read it just for the fact that we have that absence in that market. So I think that's something that goes a long way to say that a lot of people really want the opportunity to delve into something that's new, no matter the color. But definitely for other Black girls, especially to see such a strong female lead in a fantastical book where they're normally not even included in regular series, is something that I feel like is super important.
I agree. Because, I'm just going back in my mind with things that I read growing up, with the exception of It, which I wish I never would have read the book.
Ooh, no, I don't think I've ever read, but like if you can't, I'm like yourself, I would not want to read it, but I might want to go. But
well, see, I've always loved sci-fi and horror, but again, as you're talking, there was no representation of characters that I could relate to. Yeah. And if they could, I would get a hot 2 minutes and they would die in the, movies. Just thinking about and appreciating that for that next generation that could see themselves in the books, the type of books they like to read, and exploring that. So what inspired you to write a fantasy novel versus like sci-fi or horror or like a love story? Like, why did you go that route?
I think it's because it's something that I've always been interested in. Like when I think of like some of my favorite movies and favorite books, it's always been fantasy. And I feel like the opportunity to create a whole new world is a unique opportunity, because you get to introduce something that no one's read before. And so, because, I've completely made every single thing up. And so I think that was the opportunity that I couldn't pass up. I definitely want to be able to have have something that exists within the bounds of reality. And it's not even distant cousins. Like I want to be totally unrelated to, the world that as we know it. And so that was something that I felt like was why I picked fantasy for sure. I definitely wanted all about seeing black elves and or even like Eve, the oppressor in a storyline, but just people that like these elves are living their lives as regular people. Like they're just like as if you walked down the street and you saw an elf. You know what I mean? Like so, I think I definitely wanted that to be a centralized. That was one of the centralized themes of why I decided to pick fantasy, is because I don't see those characters often. If it's fantasy on TV, where it's like Lord of the Rings, like you don't really see many black characters, or if any, on those stories. And so that's something that I feel like should be changed. And so I'm like, well, let me create my own book and my own fantasy where people can read it and enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. And you never know. Who knew Harry Potter would end up a whole ride at Universal, which I love, but the line is entirely too long. But like as you're speaking, which is something I never really like thought about to the forefront of my mind, I guess, just that representation of, I have nieces that are young, and I still watch stuff, and my son and people I know, but that lack of representation, I guess, is where I'm going, does get to be a norm to where you just like, it's just another thing. So it's like now you're creating a new normal. So I congratulate you again.
Oh, thank you.
How do you see the Unveiled affecting issues in the world today, even though it's like a creative world?
One thing that I have on there is definitely addressing prejudice within communities. A lot of it outside the stereotypical, like, being prejudiced is wrong. It definitely takes into account using your privilege as also, because there's like some privileges that I have that, you don't have as a woman, and making sure that I use those privileges to not join in on the oppressor and oppressing a group, but also, which a lot of men do, especially and just to call it a spade, a lot of black men do in that country, even though they know that, even though they've tasted racism on the end when it comes to being a man, sometimes that disconnect, sometimes it becomes just as bad as those that feel as white men, that because they feel like that's a commonality. I definitely want that to be a theme of just making sure you use whatever privilege you have to uplift others and not to use it to oppress others. I think that's something that's super, super important as far as like my mindset and allowing for a better world for all. Also, another theme in this is definitely just that anybody can be whatever they want to be. I definitely wanted it to be a theme of whatever you get. I think sometimes the theme in books and movies and things like that is like once you get what you want, it's just kicks and giggles, and that's where happiness is found.
Right.
And that's because I'm not like a huge proponent of like just finding happiness. Like joy is like a state of mind. It's an action. Alia, my main character, gets exactly what she's always wanted, and it doesn't end in the way that she thought it would. And I think that's not to say that she doesn't deserve, but it's just like with more power comes great responsibility. And I think that's a theme throughout like superhero movies. You hear it in Spider-Man, but I don't think they've ever like kind of portrayed it in the fact of like, it's kind of like he became Spider-Man. It's like, oh, he's this amazing superhero, and every episode ends well. And I just don't want that to be the thing within my books. I want to make sure that like, like you can get whatever you want, but it doesn't mean that that's where your happiness is found. You know what I mean? Like that just means that you have another goal to maintain and push through. So those few things, besides seeing just people that you normally don't see on the forefront, are two big things that I made sure to include in my story and in the books that I wrote.
I love that. So the main character is a female.
Yeah, she's a female elf, and so there are humans in the city, so she's above the elves. She's above the humans. So they treat them a little bad because of the history of their city, which is talked about a little in the book as far as this book goes. But she's also, because she's a female, she's treated lesser than by other elves, and so like they have arranged marriages to agree, like women are allowed to have or I guess female elves aren't allowed to have like actual careers that they would like want. Like it's more like either you serve your home or you can join like as entertainment, things like that, or become like just like very small trivial things that like if you had an actual dream where as far as like the heels have the capacity to be whatever they want to be. And so it's something that she fights for, but also she has to address her own prejudices against the humans who live in the city, which it brings up like that first point that I had that you can't be fighting for your own rights, but like fighting to keep one's away from others, because then it's like a never-ending circle of like, well, I want what I want, but that person shouldn't have what they have, and that doesn't, make sense in the grand scheme of things,
I mean,
So,
it's fantasy, but it sounds so real world.
yes, for sure. And I think that's
Like,
kind of the best part. You get that escape in reading something that's new or disconnected, but you also get to like realize like and utilize the points and the themes in your real life. And so that's something that I want to make sure to happen. I want to like hit a nail on the head, but because we're in a fictitious world, like there is no nail.
right,
That's
right.
perfect. Yeah.
So what's the age group, so to speak?
I would definitely say teenage to young adult.
Okay.
But like you said, like I want everybody to read it. You still read Harry Potter and watch the movies. I probably will forever. So I think it transcends that. I think it's just mainly made for people who want to read a good story. If I had to give my own pitch of the person that would be reading it, just by age or genre specific group, I would say it's somebody who likes fantasy, likes a good story, and wants to support just a new face in this genre.
Is it clean enough to where, like a 10, 11, 12-year-old could read it?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
So teenagers, young adults, I would say. I haven't thought about the youngest, but definitely teenagers and young adults, I feel like would.
Like I'm really excited. I can't wait to get my hands on it, as I'm sure most of the audience is now by this point. Okay, so one quick question. Have you started on book 2?
Yes, I've actually completed the whole entire series. So book 2, I'm hoping to be able to put out in December of 2020.
I'm one of those readers, like I have like froze in time literally for like 6 hours to finish a book before, because I couldn't put it down. And so, which I have that feeling when I get your book in my hands that it's going to be the same way. And then I'm going to have a calendar scratching down the months to the next release, which is fine.
Yeah, hopefully this will be the first time, the first and only time I'd have to have that over a year release for the second one. But I definitely want to, just because it's a new book, drum up that audience that like will fall in love with this book, get people to review it, just so we could have like a following. But all great things come in time. So I feel like it's something that I know is going to be fantastic when it does come out. And it does have to wait, but hopefully it'll be worth the wait.
I'm sure it will be, and like I said, I'm definitely excited to get my hands on it. So for the listeners, how do they get the book, The Unveiled?
All right, so they could either go to my website at jovenelray.com. That's jovenelray.com and order it from there. They can go to Amazon.com, Barnes&Noble, and BarnesandNobles.com. They can also go to WeBuyBlack.com and buy that, or buy it that way. So there's just a million ways for you to enjoy this book. It's great, and yeah. Just if you do, when you guys do buy it, just make sure you leave a review so that way other readers will know how fantastic it is and how much you liked it.
I agree 100%. Make sure you get the book, leave a review, pass it to your friends, tell them to buy it, and leave a review. And that's how we do this thing, and we dominate the fantasy world. And just picture me as being the black elf queen in the story. Like I'm throwing a whole title. just picture that. MC, you are like phenomenal. I swear I thoroughly, like, I knew I was gonna enjoy it, but I just didn't know how much. Like, I'm excited. Like, I'm ready to go out there and write something. How can the audience follow you, get in touch with you, and all of those good things on social media?
So I am on Instagram and Twitter at Hoven Elray. That's JOVENELRAY. You can also follow the book page at Unveiled Series. That's both on Twitter and Instagram. And you can reach out to me also through my website at hovenelray.com. There's a page at the bottom where you can subscribe, become a part of the mailing list. I respond to most things. So any one of those ways. Also, now that I have a YouTube channel, you can follow my videos there. If you want to listen to a little bit of the other things I talk about and get a feel for the thing. I also address the book a few times there and talk about things, and that's also at Hoven Elray. So it's all under one beautiful name, thank goodness, where you can find it both me and the book.
With that being said, pens and papers down, class is officially over. Make sure you subscribe to the show and support our guest, Mr. MC Ray, author of The Unveiled. So until next time, kings and queens, remember your past doesn't define you, it gives you definition. And what you do with that is up to you. Go to ValenciaGWallace.com and find out more about the Move Retreat, because queens need a break too.